Okay. Welcome everyone to tonight's Thursday night shir. We're going to be studying a special discourse tonight. This is the last discourse in the book of Torah. Not the last one for me to teach. There's another three more. One on Hanukkah and two on Purim. So we had four discourses that we didn't teach yet in this holy book of Torah, and most of them are Megilas Esther. This last discourse, but this is the last one actually in the book. And in the book of Torah, now the book of Torah is really volume 1 of a 2-set volume, but it has two different names. Volume 1 and volume 2 are two different names. Volume 1 is called Torah Or, and Volume 2 is called Likutei Torah. They were both supposed to be named Torah Or, and Volume 1 and Volume 2. Volume 1 would be the Mamarim on the Alter Rebbe's discourses on Bereshis and Shemos, Genesis and Exodus, and Vayikra Bamidbar Dvarim would be in Likutei Torah, would be in the set Volume 2. But because the Russian government got involved and they stopped and they forbid them after Volume 1 was printed. They didn't allow Hasidic books to be printed based on certain false accusations and so on and so forth. So they took away the license to print. So the Volume 2 never got printed. But whenever there's an obstacle on holiness from the unholy, it always backfires against the unholy. So by them delaying it, Volume 2 ended up being printed in a far richer print, because by that time the Tzemach Tzedek added all of his explanations on his grandfather's book. So Volume 2 has not only the Alter Rebbe's discourses, but the very juicy parentheses of his grandson, the Tzemach Tzedek, which makes the books so much richer. So when they wanted to stop the side of unholiness, wanted to stop the spread of Hasidus to the world, they ended up getting much more because they tried to stop it. Had they not stopped it, it would have been printed immediately. Now, the first volume, which is Torah Or, in addition to the discourses on Bereshis and Shemos, also has discourses on the holidays that occur that time of the year, which is Hanukkah and Purim. Purim, if it's in a leap year, already happens while we're reading the book of Vayikra, like this year. But if not, it happens in Parshas Tetzaveh Kisisa. It would have been this week, like Purim Katan we had this week. So, therefore, in the end of the book of Likutei Torah is discourses on Megilas Esther, the reading of Esther, scroll of Esther, because that's the Purim story. Now, in addition, in the end of the book, there is Haisafes. Haisafes means additions that they added on, I don't know which point, to the book, which Mamarim that were left out that was supposed to be in. I don't know if it was printed in the first print, maybe it was only printed later. I'm not sure. These additions. The additions are on many Torah portions, quite a few of them. We learned the additions as well. The last discourse in the additions on Megilas Esther is the Maimah we're going to learn. So this is the literal last discourse in Torah, which means this is the siyum on Torah. Even though I cannot claim I'm making a siyum because I still have 3 or 4 discourses to learn. Now, my son complains to me because he's been listening to all of my classes now. He hasn't been listening, but he's been listening to the first few, the opening of every class, because he's trying to index all the classes and put them in a very clear website where you can look up based on the mimer. Now things are like all over the place. So he complains, he says, half the discourses, when you start, you say, you don't know this discourse. I'm teaching from what I don't know, not from what I do know. I had a busy week. I didn't get a chance to prepare. I feel ridiculous teaching. He tells me you did that half the discourses. You make that introduction. So I'm going to make the introduction again, but this time I'm going to say explicitly, it's not my fault. I sat hours today trying to teach a different discourse. I was going to teach one of the discourses we didn't learn on Megilas Esther earlier, And because this discourse we're going to learn has no direct connection to Megilas Esther on the revealed side. You have to guess what its connection is. I have an idea which I'll share in a moment, but it's nothing to do with the Megillah, and with Purim. So that's why it wasn't going to be my choice mimer to teach. I wanted to teach something more directly related to Purim. Problem was, the discourses, it's an explanation on another mimer. It's very, very extremely deep and very hard. Very hard. I cracked my head today for a while, and I realized that if I want to do justice to it, I'm going to have to spend a week learning 100 pages in a different discourse that explains, from the Mittler Rebbe, it explains the Alter Rebbe. So Hashem should help that next week I shouldn't have any concerns to worry about, and I should just be able to immerse myself and study that and be able to teach that, because I really do want to teach it. But I pushed that off, and only about a half an hour, 40 minutes before we were actually learning this class, I was able to prepare this discourse. I do have to say that the discourse reads pretty nicely, so it is a pretty understandable discourse. However, there are parts that I don't really get, and Hashem will help that we will get. It is very beautiful and very insightful. So let's go. The mimer is on it opens up on a verse from the book of Proverbs, where the book of Proverbs, chapter 3, Mishlei, from Shlomo, from King Solomon, chapter 3, verse Mishlei Gimel, I think. What is it? Oh yeah, you have the thing over here. Oh, beautiful. Yeah, okay. Mishlei Gimel Ches. Okay. It's the 8th, because I'm looking at the original. Here there's no, So, and what is it talking about? That a whole chapter in Proverbs is talking about the greatness of the Torah. How the Torah is, how precious the Torah is. This particular mimer, we all know that Torah is nourishment, spiritual nourishment for the soul. We learned about that. It's stated in Tanya, in chapter number 5 in Tanya, and then it's all over Chassidus, that mitzvot are called garments to the soul, and Torah is called food for the soul. And we can understand the connection of food to Torah is simple, because food nourishes a person by the person taking it in and digesting it. And then the food becomes who you are and what you are. Your food becomes absorbed in your body, it goes into your bones, into your blood, into your flesh. It makes the physical person. So the physical human being is created through the food that we eat. Now, Torah is knowledge. So knowledge works the same way. Knowledge first exists outside of the person, the information. Before you start learning anything of the sciences or whatever, it's not inside of you. And then you grow your mind and you grow your entire psyche and your whole worldview and your philosophy to life through reading, studying, knowing, and by examining. And so this information goes inside the same way like you would be taking in food. And it goes through the same process. You chew on an idea. At first you don't really, just like food is not digested immediately. You have to chew on it. And you have to separate certain parts of it. Like sometimes you're learning something and not everything you read in every book is good information. Sometimes the author of the book makes some good points, but there's a lot of junk over there. So part of the just like the eating, goes through a certain filtration process. So the same as when you're studying something, I'm not talking about Torah. I'm talking about non-Torah. So you have to separate in your mind the junk from what's good, the good points the person is making. You take it in, and then that becomes etched in your mind and forms itself into your headspace, into your mind, into your persona. And then it can trickle down into your emotions. Because based on what you know, based on that, it's what you get excited about. So you develop yourself as a human being with a certain philosophy and a certain world outlook, and passions and things that you care about, and you'll fight for or pursue or whatever. All this is from the knowledge from your education. What you've learned, what you've studied, what you've taken in. So it's literally like food becomes the person. Now, so there is food for the psyche. That's the study of any type of knowledge. Is food for the mind. The mind is developed by any type of knowledge. But when we need food for our godly soul, it's a whole different story. What's the food for the godly soul? Torah is the food for the godly soul. That's why we need to have a meal of Torah every day. We cannot go one day without Torah study. Torah is a must for any person who's got a soul. If you have a soul, you need Torah. And that nurtures you. You got to serve yourself up breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It's actually very good to eat at least twice a day, a hefty portion of Torah, with a few little snacks in between also is really, really good. So Torah in general nourishes. What's beautiful, and that's a concept we learn in Hasidus all the time. But over here he's going to introduce that in Torah itself there's two Torahs. There is the Torah that's considered external food and external eating. And then there is internal food and a process of internal eating, which is the idea of the secrets of the Torah. There is the regular Torah and there's the secrets of the Torah. And to explain the concept of the secrets of the Torah, he's going to explain the difference of the way a person eats after they are a full-fledged human being, in which we eat food the way we eat food, and the food that we eat while we are a fetus in our mom. When we're in the womb of the mother, the fetus eats as well. But it's a very internal type of eating, as we're going to see. And there's an incredible quality in the eating that the fetus eats while in the fetal state, and the nourishment that it gets. He's going to compare that food that the fetus is eating in the nourishment to the eating, to the study of the esoteric secrets of the Torah. That's a fetal type of an eating, because the baby doesn't have to do any processing of the food. The food is delivered already processed into the baby. It's not called processed food in the negative that we have. Everybody's against processed food. It's really harmful and so on and so forth. But we're talking about the nutrients and vitamins and all the good stuff without the bad stuff in its full refined state after the mother has already fully digested and refined the food to its most refined state. That's when it enters the placenta into the umbilical cord and goes into the... And if you want to know about that, you'll do what I just did 20 minutes ago and made a Google search, and a YouTube video came up, a cute little animated YouTube video talking about teaching new moms how they're feeding their babies while their babies are in their wombs. So, and they're just very brief, it explains it. And this mimer is really going to explain the same thing, but he's going to explain that there are two elements of Torah. One of them is an external eating, one is an internal eating. Now, we would think that the fetus type of eating, we eat, just like a fetus, its food intake, which is because it can't process food itself, it gets to eat the processed food that its mother ate. So it gets the finished product. It gets the vitamins and the nutrients delivered right into its bloodstream. Perfect, the fetus. But that's because the fetus can't do it itself. And on the other hand, there's a certain downside. The fetus doesn't necessarily get pleasure from the food that it eats. It doesn't really register the sensation of the pleasures of the food. So when you say to someone, we're going to give you a feeding tube and deliver the food directly into your stomach, it's God forbid, it's not happy news. We'd much rather eat from our mouth and have the enjoyments of the food and the taste buds and which goes into our taste buds and palate, where we can taste the food. So we might say that the fetal type of eating is an immature type of an eating. So spiritually it should be as well. We are trying to bring out the quality of the secrets of the Torah, the esoteric secrets of the Torah, which is already, as we're going to see. I'm just touching up on the points, which is already a fully processed spiritual food. We don't have to do any purification of it like we have to do when we study the regular Torah, as we're soon going to see. The more external part of Torah, when we study the law, when we study any other part of Torah, we need to do a lot of digesting and processing and so on and so forth. But here it's already finished. But in a sense, there is less, it would seem it's an inferior kind of eating because a fetus eats. So the truth is, we know, let me just put this in, that we're told that when we are in a fetal state, the angel teaches us the entire Torah. So that's what it says. The Talmud says that a baby in its mother's womb, the fetus, has an angel there, and there's a candle burning, whatever spiritual candle, obviously not a physical candle burning in the mother's, but a spiritual candle, and the angel is there teaching the baby the entire Torah. The entire Torah. Then it hits the baby on the lip and the baby forgets. What we're going to learn over here is that it doesn't teach the baby Tosfos and Rashba and Rabbi Akiva Eger and Shev Shmaitza and the Bach and the Shach and the Taz and the Mishnah Berurah and that's not what it's teaching. It's not teaching the law. It's teaching a more mystical Torah. It's teaching a hidden Torah. So we've all learned the Torah already in that fetal state. Is there any reason we should be thinking about it now again? Now we're supposed to eat like a mensch. Can't complain and want to be a fetus again. But we're going to see something spectacular. That although we are all born and alive and physically already born in this world and living as full-fledged people, we're not in our mother's wombs anymore. Yet, on a collective cosmic level, the entire exile is a time of being of an embryo in the mother's womb. The exile is a time that Mashiach's coming is going to be the time of our birth. So we are now in the embryonic state. We are right now in a fetal state. And therefore, to prepare for Mashiach, we need to be studying the secrets of the Torah, in which we're receiving a very high level of Torah being transmitted into our souls, which prepares us for the redemption, as we're going to see Be'ezrat Hashem later. We're going to see the benefits of this type of learning. So this really can be serve as a commercial for the Thursday night class. This whole class that we're learning today is a commercial why you should come study this class and not only study a class on halacha, a class on practical Judaism. All of that is needed, but it's also needed to get the fetal, because we develop our godly soul in a very, very, very high level through the teachings of these. It's the purest teachings possible. The teachings that we study over here on Thursday night, Chasidus in its purity. That's the gist of the discourse. Now, the connection to Purim, I would say two things. The reason it's the last mimer, this is my own thought, is because it's the end of the book. Torah Or, it's the spiritual light. The Alter Rebbe has been nursing us. Or the Alter Rebbe is like the mother, and we're inside his womb when we're reading Megilas. And he's telling us in the end of the book what he's been doing for the last 300 pages. He's been feeding us with these highest, godliest teachings, which is not food for a born person, but a food for the fetus while the fetus is in during the time of the pregnancy. So this is like kind of a closer that summarizes the entire book. That was the thought I had. That's why this is the last mimer. Another reason, the connection to Purim, as we're going to see, is because secrets of Torah are connected to Purim. Because that's the whole idea of Purim. We're supposed to drink wine, and we're supposed to come intoxicated. And the secrets of Torah are called the wine of Torah. So, and he's going to make connection to that wine, food, and so forth. So maybe that's its connection to Purim. Based on all of this, let's go. So the verse says like this: Rifus tia l'sharecha, a healing tihi, it shall be l'sharecha, to your navel. Anybody know what the navel is? The navel is the belly button. That's right. I was so ignorant that I looked it up today, and I knew navel is somewhere around here, but I wasn't exactly sure what particularly means the navel. So I did my Google search, and it says other words for navel, belly button. I said, belly button, I know. Any case, it says this will be, the Torah is a healing to your navel. Vishikui, and it is a exhaler. Exhaler is a type of a medicinal. Look at my sophisticated audience today. Navel and elixir. I had to check out both of them. Elixir is okay. Am I pronouncing it right? It's hard to pronounce the word. How do you pronounce elixir? Yeah. Okay, so it's a medicinal type of a thing, but that has kind of, it's usually more of a, it's not a drug that you're getting. What do they call it? It's a more herbal type of a thing. That's an elixir. So this is the Torah is an elixir la'atzmaisecha, to your bones, which means it heals both your navel, and it heals our navel, and it heals our bones. So what does this mean? It's healing to the navel and healing to the and a soothing to the bones. At first glance, it's not understood. We know we're talking about the Torah, and we're saying that Torah is food, or that it's a type of medicinal healing. But how can we say that Torah should be a nutrition, or a healing to a person's navel? What kind of connection can there be to the navel with the nourishment of Torah? However, behold, there is. Now we're ready, but we understand, because the belly button, the navel, is exactly at the place of the umbilical cord. When a person is born, and the umbilical cord disconnects, and the opening where the umbilical cord enters the stomach of the baby, connecting the mom's nutrition going into the stomach through the umbilical cord down into the cavity in the stomach that's open, it closes as soon as we're born. The mouth opens, we're going to see soon, and the stomach closes. Now, so that's the food that is eaten during the fetal. So the Torah, with this verse, is referring to not the Torah we eat through our mouth, which is the revealed Torah, but it's a different type of food that is feeding us on an embryonic level, which is a far more fundamental type of food. Because we understand that as we are in a fetus state, We're being developed on a much deeper level, on a far more fundamental level. The essential substance of our entire infrastructure is developed then. After we're born already, we have already everything. Now it's just about further development. But the first initial carving and design of the entire person is taking place in those crucial 9 months. So the food that is being eaten then is of the most greatest significance. So it's interesting. We think we are living now the lives of our soul. We're really now in developing, we're still in fetal state now. Mashiach, after Mashiach comes, we're going to start living based on how we developed with Torah and mitzvot now. But during this period of time, we need nourishment. And the nourishment that we get is from the Torah we study, but he's going to explain primarily the Chassidus that we study, the esoteric, the secrets of the Torah that we study. The deeper Torah, this is what nourishes us on that level. I gave you the answer already, but now let's read how he develops it. Achiniksiv, it says in the Pasuk, Shorereich Agan Hasar. God says, here is again a discussion. We're back to Shir HaShirim. We can't run away of Shir HaShirim, just mentioned earlier. In Shir HaShirim it says, your navel, Shorereich, your navel. So he is saying to her, as he's trying to describe the beauty, and he's getting very particular about every part of her body. And he says, how beautiful of this. He says to her, your navel is Agan Asar, is like a goblet and round like the moon. Sar is the moon. Agan is like a bowl. It's perfect like the moon. It's round and perfect like the moon. So what do we see? Now, if it's a goblet, and he says it should never be lacking any wine. Al yechsar, the next words, you should know it's from Shir HaShirim. Al yechsar hamazeg. Let it never be, this goblet should never be lacking the wine. Mazeg means the mixed, the liquid, the mixed drink. The mazeg, that is the liquid that is mixed to perfection. So what does that mean? So we're talking about the belly button, the navel being like a bowl, meaning a recipient where you put in wine, liquid, which in this case means it's a receptor of food. So when is that talking about? After we are already born, our belly button is just part of, our navel is just part of, human cosmetics. But there's no function to it. But in the fetus state, the navel is very important. The Hinei now explains like this. There's two types of levels in eating. One type of food, one type of food is called an external eating, and the second type of food, and the second type of food is called internal eating. There is external eating and there's internal eating. And he's going to explain what's the difference between a higher eating and a lower eating. External eating, that's the regular manner of food and food processing. How does it work? What happens is food has to turn into life. Food has to turn into soul energy. And the way it works is that within the blood flows the soul. But the blood has to constantly be continuously recreated. The blood is to be constantly made new blood. And that blood is created from the food that we eat. But when you take a potato or rice or any vegetable or protein, meat or chicken or fish or whatever it is, as you encounter it, right, it's not life. It will become life, but it itself is not ready to be human life. So what has to happen? As the person, first of all, there's a lot of preparation and food happening even before it ends up on your plate. He's not even talking about that. There is a purification in it where you're removing the the whole process is all an amazing process of extracting internal from external. This is so amazing. If you think about the whole process of life and of food, it gives you an idea of the whole system of creation. That in creation there is such a big world, but there is a small little bit that's the point of everything. It's so hard for us to believe that it's the little mitzvah that I do as a Jew in this world that's the point of heaven and earth and all of existence. How can that be? How many Jews are there in the world? How many Jews are doing mitzvot? And how much of my time am I doing the mitzvah? And yet the mitzvah is the point of why everything was created. And the entire world was created for this mitzvah. Well, you see the way everything processes, that everything starts off as a lot and big and much. But from the big and the much, how much of the farmer's farm ends up being edible, good? Wait, first, there's all the bad, but the stuff that grow that need to be weeded out and taken and pruned, and until you get a crop that works. And then once you have the crop, you have to thresh and take out the kernels from the chaff, and that whole process is a whole bunch of things that you need to do in order to get. I'm talking about producing bread, till you get the seeds. And then the seeds itself, just hard kernels, you're not eating. Or you could technically, you roast them, but it's not an edible food. It needs the processing of grinding, which takes away its chunkiness, its thickness. Then you turn it into flour, and flour needs to be sifted, so you get the good flour. And that whole process, finally you can make a loaf of bread. And the baking of it also takes out. I'm sure the baking, I'm not exactly familiar with the whole scientific process, but I'm sure it's baking and so on and so forth, burns out, or the heat gets rid of a lot of impurities, if you might say, that's in it, to make it edible for the person to eat. Finally, it's on your table. Finally, it's in your plate. Now it's edible food. Sometimes there's a peel, you have to still, finally you can eat it. Once you eat it, it's still far from being life in your body. It still needs a whole process. First process is you have to put it in your mouth. And the mouth is where the teeth get to work. The teeth are the first birur. Why? They don't separate. The teeth usually don't do the work of separating good and bad. But what the teeth do is that it softens the food, crunches it, breaks it down so that the stomach can take over. Because if you would swallow the food just in big chunks, then the acids that are in the stomach that need to break down the food would have a much harder time. And probably the food would not be digested well. So the teeth first go through the first crushing. And they process and break down the food. And you know, it's an interesting thing with the mittel. Now, this mimer over here is from the Alter Rebbe, from Rosh Zalman of Liadi, the Alter Rebbe. It's pretty short. His son, the Mittler Rebbe, has the same has this mimer. It's not under this heading. It's in a different. For those who want to know, it's in Parshas Bishalach, Mamare Admar Amsai. It's the middle of a mimer Vayasa Moshe. And the reason I'm telling you all this information, because this mimer, I believe, is a fascinating mimer. It really is. It's like new information for me. I'm very excited about it. And if you want to really understand this mimer in length and grade to the Mittler, but it's a mimer called Vayasa Moshe. In the middle of it, he says, in order to understand that information, let me give you any kind of brings in this discourse. It's the only commentary I see in the later Maimarim that are based on this. Usually you have a lot. This one is only this mimer from the Mittler Rebbe. So over there he explains how the teeth are 32 teeth to a person, which are connected to the 32 pathways of wisdom, to the power of Chachma. Now Chachma, it's interesting. We learned in many times that Chachma has the power of wisdom has the power to do birur, separate. But Chachma is biriru. The reason why Torah is what separates good and bad. Everything, we're learning it in the last discourse about the 60 wives, queens. So over there we were learning all about the Torah and how the Torah acts as a refinement in the world. What can be elevated, what cannot be elevated. So the Zohar says that's because Torah is chachma, is wisdom, and in wisdom is where the birur happens. In wisdom is where the separation of good and bad. Good, what belongs in the inside, what belongs on the outside, all of that is differentiated by wisdom. So the teeth are physical bones that are, the reason there's 32, because they're connected to the 32 pathways of wisdom. So here's the thing. The teeth are the first place in the body where the beginning of the separation of the food. Because the food as it's coming into the body is mixed good and bad. The teeth do the first breakdown of the food to allow, together with the saliva and so on and so forth, to allow for the separation to happen. So that's why the teeth are connected to chachma, because chachma does the birur. They initiate the process of the internal birur that's taking place inside the person. There is an external birur that we spoke earlier that happens already before the food gets to you. The farmer is already doing a birur in the farm and so on and so forth. But we're talking about as the process of separation and refinement takes place inside the human being, it starts with the teeth. Because in the teeth is me'er, gewaldig idea. Now you know, when you're going to the dentist, no one likes going to the dentist, you know you're going to straighten out your chachma a little bit. Chachma is very important to be straightened out. So in any case, so the teeth do the first breaking. Now the food is a little closer to being human life, but it's still a long way to go. And it goes down, goes into the stomach, and what happens? That's when all the acids come in and all that stuff that are in the stomach, and it further disintegrates the food. Once the food gets broken down, right away there's a pile of good stuff and a pile of what we call chazarai. Chazarai means junk. And the junk, it's got to be separated. Not everything is ready to go into the bloodstream. And we know that we don't want all of that gook in the bloodstream. God forbid. So the stomach is an amazing filter. It's an amazing piece of machinery. The whole digestive order. Again, I'm not a doctor or a biologist, and I can't tell you much about it. But right. So now what happens? It does this breakdown and the separation. Then, when the best of the food is ready, the nutrients and the proteins, whatever is good for the body, it sends it, then it somehow, I'm not exactly sure the details of it, but it somehow ends up in the liver, which is another filter, and where the blood is formed. And but the liver, the blood in the liver is still a more coarser type of a blood. Then it goes up to the heart. And in the heart there's a more refined level of blood. And from the heart, the blood goes up to the brain, which it reaches the peak of refinement. And it's over there where it can become vivified with life, with the soul, with true life. And now that the blood is energized with the pure spiritual side of the human being, and it's imbued together with the blood, from there, the brain diffuses, sends it back to the heart, the refined blood, most refined, and then the blood circulates around the body to bring Ruach Chaim, the spirit of life, through all the life. And all of this is from the salad or soup or chicken that was yesterday, chicken on your table, becomes life force within the human being. But it will not turn into human life, into its life-giving qualities, unless it will go through a whole procedure from external to internal. And to go from external into internal To go from that process, it needs to go through much filters. That's the process. The filtering separates, and the filtration happens in a few levels. The more it's going into a further filter, the more refined it is already. Closer to the soul. Closer to be able to receive the soul and the light. That's why it's called achila chitzonit, external. Because it's starting off external and it's going in internal. Two things. The food itself starts off as an external entity till it becomes the pure nutrients that the body needs. So the food itself went from an external state to an internal state, to a more refined state, from a more physical state to a more spiritual state. And the same is also in the person eating it. The food process starts on the outside of the person, in the mouth, which is on the outside of the person. The next stage, it's inside the human being, inside the stomach. It's a more pneumiastic side. Kerev is called kravayim. Kerev, which is stomach, Kerev is inside. It's inside, it's more pneumius. And from the inside of the stomach, it goes into a more pneumiastic place, which is the liver. Then it goes into even a more pneumius. Pneumius means a more internal organ. It goes into the heart. From the heart, it goes into the most pneumius, the most internal, the highest level, most refined organ, which is the brain. So you see it's moving from externality into internality, to internalization. That's the process of eating. And it's amazing that just like this is in the physical food, the same is when we study Torah. The Torah that we learn when we're learning the revealed Torah is also the same thing. You have to chew it. You have to put it into your stomach. It has to digest. It's a whole process. To take the Torah will only become spiritual vitality and energy for the soul if the Torah was treated in the right manner. Now, just because you learn halacha, today someone got me so upset. I'm going to share my frustration. They shared with me that this rabbi in their school, I don't know the name of the rabbi, and I'm happy I don't know the rabbi because I would be very angry at him if I knew his name, and I don't have to know his name. So someone sent me, she might be listening now, so I'm happy, and she sent me a Lior, who used to come to the Thursday shir. So she sends me, like, she studies in a school, I'm not going to say where, and the rabbi gave a whole lesson about how terrible it is to go daven at the resting places of tzaddikim. How it smells with idolatry and bum. I love these I get so angry, I want to take a I'm ready to explode. I love these defenders of God. They're so busy with keeping God like the no intermediator, no, or else it's this. You know what? All these people don't do a thing for Judaism. They sit on their, I'm not going to say what, and nothing comes from them. It's the people who are connected to tzaddikim and to rebbes and stuff like that have the energy and have mesiras nefesh and turn over the world and do all the godly things. These people are so stuck up in themselves with it gets me so mad. I can't handle it anymore. I don't know what these rabbis have this interest to protect the unity of God. That's the only thing they care about, is this unity of God. If God forbid you go to a tzaddik and you daven, you're already an idolater, you have already another God. Go already! What does it get me? Why does it get me so upset? Because these people have never digested a bit of Torah. The Torah that they're learning, literally, I'm saying it and I'm being very, very harsh because I believe it without a question. All the Baba Kama, Baba Metzia, and is sitting constipated in their stomachs. It never digested into their souls to release a little spiritual light. And that's why they're so smug and don't have any bit of sense of what is a tzaddik, what is godliness. There's such a, it gets me upset. So I'm using that as an example. Torah needs to be studied and recognized that it's godly, it's whole, And then when you study Torah that way, you don't make. And I said to this girl, I said, you're arguing, you're making an argument not to go. And it's not that the rabbi had a source sheet. He found in Torah where it says. So I said, in Torah there is always the rule that when you find the conduct of people that we rely on is more than what they said in the book. You look at their conduct. Always the deciding factor is what we call Maisa Rav. What does Maisa Rav mean? The action of a rabbi. So, for example, when the Talmud has a question theoretically about a halacha, and one rabbi says like this, and one rabbi says like this, how do you know what the final verdict is? How do you decide? So, a lot of times the Gemara would say, I have a story that we were in this place, and this rabbi did so and so. And when the Gemara says, once you have an action that an actual rabbi did it, he didn't just say, but he did it, that means that that's the halach. So how can someone stand after 2,000 years of Jewish history, where the biggest tzaddikim would always visit, the Arizal, the Boinish God from the Arizal would go to Reb Shimon Bar Yochai on Meron and write how the Reb Chaim Fetal says the Arizal would be so in trembling when he would go to Reb Shimon Bar Yochai Meron. I think he even said he got down on all fours and he climbed. He was in such awe. I remember, if I'm making a mistake, I made a mistake, but I got down on his hands and knees and walked in trepidation and fear. The biggest tzaddikim would go. So how can someone today come and say, tell people, because this guy was all upset that people go to the Rebbe's Ohel. That's what he was upset. That's why, because thousands of people are going to the Rebbe's resting place and getting miracles and answers and inspiration, and these smug people can't stand it. So what do you mean? But you see that there's thousands of. This is what the Jewish people have been doing. It's on these minhagim that we survived the exile. This is what kept us alive. This was our oxygen. We always communicated with those who already were on the other world. Whether you communicated, you didn't communicate, but you were. So once you know that thousands of tzaddikim and goinim and gedolei Yisrael from all the generations did it, so you're going to find me. First of all, for every source he has, there's 100 sources on the opposite. But let's say he's already found himself 2-3 sources which he uses, and you're not allowed to. Come on. So if I'm using that as an example of when you study, you don't study Torah with holiness and with purity, then the Torah that goes in, it remains undigested. And it's information, it's knowledge. Okay, so take the information, the knowledge. What's godly about it? Is it entering your soul? Is it increasing your spirituality? You stay so stuck in the intellectualism without ever allowing the godliness to shine, the soul to shine. Torah is meant to be a nourishment into the soul. So that's why when you learn Torah, it follows the same process of food. First of all, it says you have to chew it. And that chewing Torah means that you have to actually say the words with your mouth. Torah is not like any other study. You go to a library and you sit quietly and you read a book with your eyes. Torah must be spoken. And you must say the words out clearly and strongly. Because that's the chewing that happens when you're studying Torah. You're chewing the words. You're breaking it down. Now we learned it, and then it goes into the stomach. It has to sit in you. Now here the Alter Rebbe doesn't explain it, but we once learned another mimer which brings out the same idea, that bread is not you can't if you eat bread that's not baked, when it's still dough, won't nourish you because your body can't digest it. You have to bake it. So there we learned that you have to put it in the oven. What's the oven? The oven is the passion of prayer. You meditate on the oneness of God. You create a fire in your soul, a spiritual fire, and that spiritual fire breaks down the food that you eat. And that spiritual fire breaks down the food, bakes the food. So now it's edible. And the Alter Rebbe says, if you don't daven, if you don't meditate, if you don't have fire, then there's nothing to bake your Torah. So then you can eat Torah, which is called bread, but it's going to be undigested bread. And it's not going to do your soul any good. It's not going to enter into your soul. So there he's talking about the process of preparation of Torah, which has to do before you eat it. You have to bake the Torah. But here, similar to that, once you've chewed it, it goes into your stomach. It has to sit. And eventually, the Torah that you studied, remember we learned in last week's week, we learned that the Torah of the week is elevated through, we learned it in last week's Thursday night, is elevated in the prayer of every day. And the prayer of every day, together with the Torah of the day, is elevated in the prayer of Shabbos. Mamash learned it last week, that the Torah is only Torah if you first pray. That was the whole theme of last week's Thursday night class. That means you have. So the revealed part of the Torah is the same process of food. But that's only in the revealed part of the Torah. Why? Because you're learning the Torah in its external form. You're studying the Torah when the Torah is embedded, the subject matter of the Torah is the material physical world. Since you're encountering the Torah as the Torah is in the material physical world, for that reason, it's not refined immediately. You need to go through a process of refinement. That's why the sages say that it's possible for a person to learn Torah, and the Torah does more damage than it does good. Because it's a mixture of good and bad, depending how you're going to learn it. A person could study Torah, and all it does is bolster their ego. It doesn't in any way. It doesn't develop a neshama. It doesn't clean. Oh, but that's only. But in the secret parts of the Torah, the Chassidus, that's as soon as you study it, it's already nourishing your soul. It doesn't need that processing because it's already it's the food of the fetus, as we're going to see soon, who comes to us delivered pure nutrition. It's not in a package that you need to take out the externality. That's the idea. Gewaldig. I'm sorry, I'm talking too much. Now let's learn. Okay. I have to ask for forgiveness from all these rabbis. I'm sorry. I really just went into a rant because I was just very upset today when I saw that. No, because I got this the second time this year. What would they say? Never saw such rabbis. I don't know what they want. Leave people alone. People want to go pray by tzaddikim. What's with you? It bothers you? That's the problem in Judaism today. The problem in Judaism is people going to Rebbe. Maybe the problem in Judaism is that people are eating too much chicken poppers. Maybe that's the problem. The people, I don't know, too many restaurants. Maybe people are too indulgent. Maybe people are going to the Virgin Islands for Pesach or to the Caribbean. Maybe that's the problem in Judaism. I'm sure these rabbis who make these speeches are in the Virgin Islands and on the Caribbean for Pesach. Please leave me alone. It's the holy Jews who care and drive about Mashiach and are fired up about they're simple and pure and they go to tzaddikim and they're the problem Jews. Like come on. Like where is the refinement? Yes, I do have Rahmanis. Okay. Is like our eating. Let's read. The food is coarse. First it enters the mouth. And it is a whole piece of food. But it's complete in its coarseness. Adayin. Then and then the teeth grind it. And then it goes down to the stomach. Is bashel, to be baked. So it's interesting that the acids in the stomach like kind of do another cooking on the food. Breaking it just like cooking. It breaks it down. V'nivrer oid bitter yosef pnimi, and it gets a more internal purification and filtration. V'nivdal memenu achitzonius, and the external of it gets separated, and the internal gets absorbed. V'hi apsoilas, what's the chitzonius? What's the external? V'apsoilas, that's the impurities that are in it. V'yoytza l'chutz, and that gets sent out to go out to be flushed out of the body. V'apnimis, and the good part of the food, shaboy, that is inside, ba beberirum mechadash, goes through these birurim, goes through these another filter. Now, it doesn't say where the second filter takes place, but from the stomach, it goes through another filtration, lehisapech ledam, to become blood. Oh, and I guess he's explaining over here where this filtration takes place. Tchila bekavid, first in the liver. Umenakavid oila bebire yosef pnimi, and from the liver, it's going even through a deeper purification. In other words, what the liver lets through, what the liver does not remove, because it's good enough for the liver, is not good enough for the heart. So from the liver, it will travel up, and I'm not sure if the next purification happens in the heart or it happens somewhere in between the liver and the heart. As it's moving in there, it gets even more refined. It becomes more spiritual, badam shebalev, in the blood that's in the heart. And afterwards, and then it rises up and it goes into the brain. And it becomes more refined. It becomes life that is very close to spirit, or at least it's a vessel for spirituality. And then it reached its potential. It reached its most refined, elevated spiritual state. And then in the head, when it's in its peak of spirituality, the food that you ate, that means the pnimius, the innermost of the food. What happens? It goes back down into the heart, and into the limbs of the body, to enliven them, and to strengthen them. Comes out that this type of eating is called external eating. It's two reasons why it's called external. One is mitzad gufish al meichel. Trace the food itself. The food was once dense, thick, mixed of the internal and the outternal. That's why it's now in an external state. This food will need much filtration and purification until it can become compatible with the body, till it can become life in the body, and to nutrition, la nefesh baguf, to the soul that's in the body. Keniskala, as we mentioned earlier. And the next one, mitzad seder adragas achila. The other one is the order of the way the person eats, the action of eating. It starts with the mouth, which is external, goes down to the stomach, which is a little more internal, goes to the liver, which is more internal, going into the heart, and eventually into the brain. So it's moving from outside to inside. It comes first into the mouth. From the mouth into the stomach. And it moves from vessel to vessel, meaning from organ to organ, which in each time when it's arriving in a further organ, it is cleaner, more refined, more elevated, lihizbader, to be purified, chulu, to its utmost. And this is called external eating. And now let's take a look what means another form of nutrition, which works directly. It's delivered in its most potent, purified state without any, what do you call it? It's concentrated nutrition. There's no externalities. It's the one word is concentrate. What other word might there be for it? The most, how would you call it? Besides a word for concentrate. Do you have another word for that?
The essence?
No, it's like when they take various different tamtzit. Yeah, it's not the something I'm looking for. Tamtzit is not the English word that I'm looking for. Okay. Okay, no. And the second one, that's called internal eating. This is the food that the fetus eats when it's in its mother's womb. He eats what his mother eats. So the sages say an interesting thing. The fetus eats what the mom eats. And it drinks what the mom drinks. As it is known amongst what the sages say, that the fetus in its mother's womb, makupol, is folded over, and its head is between its lap. That means the baby is it's between its knees. So the baby is like a book that's folded. Its head is down by its knees, like you can see pictures already today. And the ben birkov, the taburoi pasuach, and its navel is open, upiv sasem, and its mouth is closed. And the sages say, kashanoilad, and which we know is scientific as well, when the baby is born, niftach hasasum, that which is closed, that which was locked, opens up, which is the mouth and the nostril. I think the breathing, it all opens. V'nistam hapasuach, and that which was open, which is the navel, shuts and closes. Shetaburoi nistam, its navel closes, upiv niftach, and the mouth opens up. Now, since the mouth is closed and there's no access through the mouth while it's in the mother, so it can't do external eating. External eating has to start all the way on the outside. And the outside, the first filtration, the first machinery, the first processor, which is the mouth, is not available for the baby. So you got to kind of get in from the inside. So he's going to explain, number one, it's not coming through the mouth at all. So first he's going to speak about, remember he said two things. He says, let's analyze the food itself and also the manner in which we eat. So the manner in which we eat, we start with the outside and we move to the inside. But with the baby, he's now starting with the manner in which we eat as number one. He says the baby's food is not coming through the mouth. Elo derech, where is it coming? It's coming from an inside organ. Hatabur hapasuachu oichel. So it's open lip. Now, even though you can ask, it's still starting in the second level. It's not starting in the brain. It's not going directly into the heart. It's not going directly into the liver. It's going into the stomach. But even when it's coming into the stomach, it's not coming like the same way like mom takes the food in the stomach. When mom is eating broccoli or whatever it is, she's getting broccoli in her stomach. She's got to take that broccoli and grind it down, and by the time it gets into the placenta, it's only the best of the best of that broccoli. It's not any of the, whatever shouldn't be there is not coming in there. So the baby is not doing that process. It's receiving into its stomach already in a very, very clean, pure food. Like when he's going to be born, even when he's nursing, when he or she are nursing, they're nursing through their mouth. But the fetus, before the nursing, before when it's still a fetus, is not eating through the mouth. And the baby receives kol mashecheles imoy betaburoi. It receives everything that his mom eats in his stomach. Ki ha'ubar yerech imoyhu. The sages characterize a baby like the thigh of the mother, meaning to say, a fetus in the mother's womb is considered one of the mother's limbs. And just like the other limbs in the body, your fingers don't receive broccoli because fingers can't handle broccoli. Even they don't receive tomatoes, cucumbers, or anything like that. They do receive tomatoes, cucumbers, but in their finished form when it's blood. Not in its unrefined state. Only the stomach and the digestion is where you can put unrefined food in. You can't put it in any other part of the body. So since the fetus is considered a limb of the parent, of the mother, so the fetus is so that then it needs to receive food only in its most refined state. It's not receiving just blood. It's actually receiving, I don't know what it is, a fluid or something, but it is in its most refined state, the food. Ke'echad mishara there is like one of the other limbs. And this food, this nutrition that comes into its open navel, it's not the physical in its core state. It's still, I wouldn't say it's spiritual, but it's not the physical food. Because if it would be physical, it would still go into the stomach and it would need to be digested. And the fetus can't do that. Why? Because the fetus, even after the fetus is born, and a little baby, think about it, a little baby. For the first year, it's nursing. You can't give the baby food. Why? Because the baby's stomach is not ready to process food. So if a born baby who has already far more developed a month or two into their being already, their body has to receive milk only. So how much more so the fetus would not be able to take the unrefined food? So what's happening is it goes to the mother's keba, the mother's stomach. And from the mother's stomach it goes out. It goes into the navel of the child, of the more spiritual side of the food. That is, again, when we say spiritual, we don't mean pure spirit, but we mean the more refined nutrients, vitamins, the food in its most sublime, pure state, in its most pneumistic state. And it doesn't go through a whole order of processing. And the way it works is like this. As soon as the food goes into the mom's stomach, mom's stomach, Hashem created in a very intelligent body, piece of machinery, that the mother's stomach, while she has a baby, mom's physical body is made in a way that it takes like immediately a nice chunk and the best of her food and sends it the baby's way. Mother is not just concerned with herself, even though in her mind she might not be processing it, but her body, its instinctive maternal physical makeup of the woman's body is when there is a fetus there, her digestion knows that it needs to, instead of here's the thing, because we said before that from the stomach it goes to the liver and it becomes blood. But mom doesn't send immediately to the liver. She separates a portion and sends it directly to feed the baby. Isn't it? That's why I'm understanding it. Again, that's my understanding of what he's saying. She takes the best of the best. Latabor goes into the navel, tabor avla, to the navel of the child. V'zanoi, and it nourishes him or her, whatever it is, and it nourishes the child with this food. It's not that the coarse food goes into its navel, into its stomach, and that's the proof. That's the proof that we said earlier. Because even when the baby will be born, the year ben shana, and it'll be a year old already, the stomach of the baby is not yet mature enough to be able to get real food. Children don't start eating. Mothers, they start with a little applesauce, with a little smashed banana, with a little oatmeal, with a little. You give very light stuff. You slowly get the baby's stomach slowly to be able to handle, more of a digestion, what would need more of a digestive process. The baby's stomach can only take milk, Yadua. So definitely, the baby's stomach can definitely not eat pizza. Mom, he's eating pizza, but the pizza needs to first Hopefully she's not just eating pizza, she's eating a vegetable slice, so that the baby can get the nutrients of the vegetables and maybe some of this quality to the flour, the tomato sauce. Okay, I'm sure there's good in everything, right? Okay. Rather, the spiritual of the food that is the most pnimi, that is the most refined. After it's delivered to the baby as it is after post processing, after all its refinement. Then it goes into the stomach. Again, it goes into the placenta first, and through the placenta it goes into the baby, into the fetus through the umbilical cord. And this is its primary growth through the food that it eats. It grows as an embryo, what's it called? How do you say it? What? An embryo, yeah. It grows as an embryo inside the mother. My wife, I remember 10 years ago, I gave a class. It was a Monday night class. And I was saying the word really, I remember embryo. I was saying it really bad, and she was lecturing me afterwards that was so funny. Why are you using a word that you don't know how to say? Okay. She was fixing me up a little bit. So since then, I'm terrified to say the word embryo. I want to say it. Fetus I can say, but I have to just remember. I didn't really have much of a English education when I was a kid. I learned in a very Hasidic school. We learned only till 5th grade or 6th grade, and even that was in a Hasidic school. So let's leave that on a 3rd grade. Let's leave that on a 3rd grade level of English education, and then I had to learn English while I was trying to teach Hasidism. So for that, I don't think I'm so bad. But ubezehu kol iker gidulai, and with this is all of the primary growth betes chadashim in the 9 months. Eliyos by gidul hamshachas moichen umidais. And interesting, when the mom is delivering the nutrition into the baby, this nutrition that's going in is developing the child physically, but it's also developing the mind and emotional structure of this child. Now, when we say it's not, and that's coming from the mother's intelligence and from the mother's emotional structure. And while his mom is sharing with the child a lot of information, she's building the internal psychological structure of the child. But what's interesting, here he says very little. The Mittler Rebbe is a little more, is explaining more. But he was a little cryptic because he was explaining, but he was explaining it a little bit more Kabbalistically. But what the gist of it, that I understood, is, the baby is not born with mom's opinions. The baby is not born with mom's hang-ups and frustrations and emotions, literal emotions. Because that's already the software. So the mother is not really giving so much the software. The software is what you run, what you're going to process yourself when you're alive, what you're going to be exposed to, how you're going to develop your own emotions and your own intelligence based on, right? What, as we discussed earlier, you read, you study, you learn, you converse, and all that intake that you take. But that primarily happens once you're born. Once you're born. When you're in preborn state, in fetus state, what mom is creating is, in the words of the Mittler Rebbe, she's not creating the nefesh, ruach, neshama, she's creating the chai yechida of the child. What does that mean? She's creating the encompassing levels of the soul of the child. Meaning to say, she's producing the mind itself, not the information in the mind. She's producing the way the person will think, not the thinking itself. She's producing the way, the general structure of the temperament of the emotions, not the emotions itself. So it's a more, and it's a very sensitive production. Because the way mom is producing, that's why it's probably important that mothers should be careful what they eat. And because if you eat refined food, then that produces a refinement in a person's thinking. Anything again, it's all, since we are what we eat, so the food that we eat, if it's very coarse, it creates a coarseness in the mother. So her emotional state and her intellectual state is in a coarser state. It will have repercussions that the baby's essential infrastructure of mind and the I don't know how you would call it, the psyche of the baby, the internal psyche, not the external changeable self, but the more inner carving of the structure of the person's being is going to be dependent on that. The fetus is very much developed from the mom, but in particularly from the mom's experiences during the time of pregnancy has a big influence on the child, and a lot of that has to do with the food that the mother eats. We've always known that in Judaism, we've always known it in Judaism that a mother during the time of pregnancy has huge impact. What she listens to, what she exposes herself to her children. So Jewish moms who wanted to have very, very holy children and very spiritual prone children would make an effort during pregnancy to be extra careful of what they expose themselves to. So I'm not saying that if you watched a movie and you watched a horror movie while you're pregnant, your child will actually, the fetus will actually have that story inside of them. But, and maybe even some of that is there too. But what definitely does happen is if the mother is experiencing deep fear or other anxiety or whatever the movie is awakening while watching it and creating a certain trauma or a certain experience, that's impactful on the development on the child that's happening during that time. To what degree, how subtle it is, how obviously one particular experience is not going to form the entire child, but it's all there. The information is all, and it gets carried in the food, which is interesting. It gets carried and transmitted through the food that is eating. So that's what he's adding. Elias by Gidel Hamshachas Moichen Umidas. So it's this, but this is all through the internal nourishment that the mother is nurturing the child. It's developing the body and growing the body, but also developing the psychological infrastructure of the child. Hakol memoichen umidas shel imay. It's all developed from the intelligence and from the emotions of the mom. Mamish, literally. Achar she'enoi oichel, since he's only eating rak ma she'imay oicheles, only what the mother ate and what the mother took in to her experience. That's how she's feeding the child. So it's two things. It's the quality of the food itself. Again, as we mentioned, therefore we should try to eat. Pregnant women should be extra careful on what they eat. Secondly, mom herself puts her imprint into the nutrition that she's giving her children. In other words, two women could be eating the same diet. Exactly the same diet. Literally the same food. They can have one chef who's cooking for these two women and literally giving them all their meals from their moment of conception till the moment of birth. I wonder if they would do a study on that, how the children, that would be an interesting thing to see. But obviously there is, meaning in addition to genetics, like how much the food that is being during the time of pregnancy impacted, but in addition to that, the emotion, the food that we take, what we said earlier, what happens to it? It enters into our bloodstream. It becomes our life force, which includes our intelligence and our emotions. So that all mixes into the food. So when mom feeds her baby, I'm not talking about nursing, I'm talking even the food that she gives the fetus, which is even more crucial because this is not creating, this is what's carving and nurturing the development of the very substance of the person, not the you're developing the hard drive, not just the software. And as you're developing that, that has so much more. That is so much more pivotal in the development of the child. Okay. Imkain, therefore, as he explains over here, all the intelligence and the emotions that has now grown upon the mom through the food that she eats, it means as she takes in the food and the food becomes her bloodstream and as it's mingling with her life force. So therefore the food is now carrying and it's one with her life force. So her intelligence that was added to her during this time, she got new information. She took in information. Her emotions that are developed, that the mother is experiencing, either new emotions that she never had, or if she had them, but strengthening these emotions, or experiencing after it becomes completely refined. So that is now flowing into the baby. So they end up being so in the child as well. Not in the consciousness of the child, but in the pre-consciousness of the child. That's why it's so much more sensitive. Because it's now the rest of the child's life, they're going to be working with the development that they received from the mother. Are in the child, but all from this that he eats from his stomach, from his navel. And that's why this eating is called internal eating. Eats. The person is eating the pnimius, the internal, immediately. And it immediately enters into its navel in a pnimiistic way, in a refined state, and not through the mouth where it's going through oh no. See, in this small little lines over here, I want to read over this line over here. Okay, v'alkein, he's explaining. This is called internal eating, for the two reasons we said before that external eating is called external eating. External eating, he said, is called external eating for two reasons. Reason number one is the person that's eating it is taking it in their external organs first, and then internalizing it. Plus, the food itself is in an external state until it gets into an internal state. So again, the difference is in the food and in the processor of the food, in the person that's eating the food. So the same is on the other side. In the internal eating, the difference is in both things. First of all, the food itself is already pnimiistic food. By the time it arrives to the child, it is already a spiritual kind of food. A very close to a spiritual type of a food. And secondly, the child is immediately taking it into the internal organs. It's not going through the external organs. To get to the internal organs, it goes immediately into the internal element of the child. Number one, immediately the child is getting the concentrated nutrition of the mother, together, as we said before, with the mother's intelligence and emotions that as well are administered in this food, creating an external child and an internal child. That's a point that we can't fail to miss in this discourse. The mother, during her development to her child, is creating the physical body of the child, but also the psyche of the child. That's the more internal structure she's building. And both of them are related to the food. Her impact on her child is through the food that she's giving. It also goes immediately into an internal organ, not through the mouth. It is enough to those who understand. So now he's going to explain this all, how this relates to Torah, and how this relates to our experience of eating today's days when we eat Torah as our food. That there's two types of Torah study: an external Torah study, which is learning the external part of Torah, which is halacha and Talmud and all that thing. And then there is an internal Torah study. Which is studying the secrets of the Torah. So let's see. Now again, it's interesting. In his explanation of how this is in our development spiritually, he's immediately talking about the how this is in the supernal world up there in the divine. Because everything that happens, everything we have in our physical dimension, in our spiritual world, the world of our soul and the world of our body, mirrors and reflects the divine experience. Because God created us in his image. So just like down here there is external eating and internal eating, even in the divine being, God is called a person as well, there is God eating as well. And there is God eating external food. When I say God, I mean the divine, the godly human, the godly being. That is called the Ze'er Anpin, the supernal man above, called the Ze'er Anpin, the small face of God, whatever that means, which we discussed so many times, the element of the Sefirot, it eats. There is the eating of the Sefirot of the Ze'er Anpin after it is born already, as a full-fledged being, and then its eating is considered an external eating. And then there's a far more internal eating when the Ze'er Anpin, the divine being above, is still a fetus in its mother. The mother of it is Bina. And when it is a fetus, it gets nourished by Bina, and its quality of its food is much higher than what it's eating when it is already born. Just like in the person, the quality of the food is already refined food when we're in the fetal state still. So as he says, when the Ze'er Anpin, which is a reference to the 6 divine emotions, which are the main structure of God emerging as an image of a person. So that divine being has a mother, which is a higher level of divinity. That's the level of the divine intelligence called mother. So, and it also exists in a state of fetus. Actually, according to the Ari, according to the Kabbalah, the entire period of when the Jews were in Egypt, the exile, we mentioned it earlier, is a time of, the prophet compares it to a pregnancy. Exile is considered to a pregnancy. And the Jewish people in exile are like the fetus inside the mother. Now, just like physically it is, when we're in exile, the exile doesn't begin here, it begins in the highest levels. So the divine being above is also in a fetal state. The Ze'er Anpin is in a state of fetus, in a fetal state. And when it is in this embryonic state, how does it eat? It eats from its mother. But a very refined eating. It's in its supernal mother, in the Bina. It gets to eat what his mother eats. So you'll understand an amazing thing. Why is it that it's only in the time of exile that the deepest secrets of Torah were revealed? Reb Shimon Bar Yochai Zohar was written in exile. The Holy Ari was revealing secrets of the Torah in exile. And then the Baal Shem Tov, Hasidism, No, the Torah itself was given when we went out of Egypt. We were in a time of redemption. But why in exile? Now we'll understand. Because the Hasidism and the secret, these esoteric teachings, is a different type of nutrition. And it's a nutrition that is given to the fetus during this very, very clean and pure transmission, where the Torah is not in external things. It's not in the external world where we have to extract the godly content from otherwise a very physical story. We're reading a physical story, we're reading a physical law. So we're doing an extraction. That's external eating. But we're receiving immediately, the Torah is being transmitted in purely Kabbalistic language, in purely divine words. That's the greatness of the mystical Torah. It's the concentrate of godliness given to us directly. From where? From Bina, from the supernal Bina. That's where the Hasidus comes from. And she is feeding the Bina, our mother is feeding Knesset Yisrael, is feeding her child. The divine being called Ze'er Anpin is being given nutrition from the wisdom of Torah, from his mother, but it's not an external eating, it's an internal eating. And then he's on the same level like his mother. Now Bina is way, way, way above the Ze'er Anpin. In general, Chachma and Bina are infinitely higher than the Ze'er Anpin and the 6 emotions. The 6 emotions are considered the external side of God, and Chachma and Bina are considered the internal. In Hashem's name, the Yud Kei Vav Kei. Yud Kei are the internal levels. Internal levels of God's name. They're called the hidden letters, the hidden world. And Vav Kei is the external world. So the Vav Kei is so much lower than the Yud Kei. So usually, once the Ze'er Anpin is fully developed, it has to eat its own food. It doesn't eat what mom eats. It can be invited over to mother for dinner once, and the mother won't cook him a dinner. But it's not eating directly mother's food. And definitely it's not getting the food in the most processed, refined level. But when the Ze'er Anpin is in a state of being a fetus, and it can eat on its own raw, dense, thick, unrefined food, meaning Torah as it is already enclosed in the external worlds. That's what it means. The Torah as it is enclosed in the external world. But it has to receive the Torah in its most divine, purest transmission. And then the Ze'er Anpin is in a higher state, because it is then it is equal to the level of the innermost of Bina Nikra Yoiv Leila, which is called the supernal Jubilee. Because he's being directly fed what his mother eats. So obviously this is a very, very, very godly spiritual concept taking place on the level of the divine Sephirot above, that they're being nurtured by a very, very pure, refined liquid, if you can say, of Torah, that's of divine wisdom that's going in there. But the biggest tzaddikim, like the holy Baal Shem Tov, like the Rabbeim, like the Chabad Rabbeim, they were able to tap that nutrition coming from Bina Elah. Or you might even say that their souls are from Bina. They are the mother souls, nurturing the Jewish people who are the fetus. We might even, I'm not exactly sure where to put them. If they are the side of the fetus, being that they're the highest souls, so they're receiving this trickle coming from Bina, and therefore they're the ones who receive this Pnimiyas Sator, and they can share it with us. Or that they are part of Bina Elah. They're part of the mother feeding these tzaddikim. It doesn't say in the Maimer. That part he doesn't say in the Maimer. These tzaddikim that are transmitting Pnimiyas Sator, it could be they processed it, they extracted it, they're the level of Bina, and they're feeding it through our umbilical cord. They are feeding it to us. And that's what when a Rebbe is saying a Maimer, that's what he's doing. Because and you'll say, what do you mean we're a fetus? Yeah, because in exile, Our Rabbeim are developing us to be the humans we need to be when Mashiach comes. Then we'll be born, but they carried us in their womb and developed us through the Torah. They've been nurturing us. Isn't that an amazing idea? I never thought of it that way. We haven't been born yet to live. That's going to happen after Mashiach comes. I mean, in Egypt, we were in exile. We were born. That was one level of. Then we went back into a fetus state, because we're being born again in this redemption on a much higher level than when we went out of Egypt. In between, we're in a fetus state. During this fetal time, we need, in addition to the revealed Torah, we need the concealed Torah to feed us. Now, it doesn't mean we drop the revealed Torah. We have to continue learning the revealed Torah as well, because to a certain degree, we are already born and full-fledged people. It's only compared to the higher self that we're going to be after Mashiach comes, we're now the fetus state. But in relative to who we are now, we are fully born. And as when you're a full-fledged human being, you can't decide that you want to eat your mom's pure liquefied food. You can't take along your umbilical cord with you when you're 30 years old and try to plug into mom for her nutrition that she ate. It doesn't work. So we need to eat both types of eating. We need to eat the revealed Torah, and we need to eat also because a higher side of ourselves is being developed now as a fetus. I'm excited. This is such phenomenal information. Why am I excited? Because I never heard this information before. A lot of Hasidus you learn, you get like, oh, we've heard, it's a different angle. But this is like new, this is gewaldig. Now, there's another point over here which is very special. And that is another reason why we have to study the revealed Torah as well. We have to study halacha, just because we have to know how to do mitzvahs. But we have to study and Shas and Poskim, which is working out the halacha and all of that, which is part of the chewing and the cleansing, all that we discussed earlier. You have to do that too. Why? We're getting the purest transmission of this liquefied food that's coming to us from Bnei Allah. But where does Bnei Allah get it? How does mom create the food for her child? She eats the external food. Mother eats regular food. She eats chicken and meat and fish and vegetables and salad and proteins and grains, whatever it is she's eating. She takes this food and she has to do the refining process. And then from her best of the food, she transmits. So it's interesting. This higher secrets of Torah, which Bina is giving to us, is created through the birurim, through the sparks of holiness that are elevated through the external eating that comes from regular Torah study. So there's like this type of cycle that's happening. And that's why it's interesting, you see that most of the Jewish people don't even touch the esoteric stuff. So they're part of providing mom with food that she eats, but the actual nutrition, internal nutrition going. So it really is going into the souls of all of the Jewish people, whether we know it or not. But some people are fortunate to study it. Those who learn Hasidus are fortunate to actually be like actively receiving this nutrition from the great tzaddikim who are providing it.
Isn't that what happened in the Holy Temple, that the Kohanim was eating with food, and through that they were doing it for all the Jewish people? That's the same process, isn't it?
Similar. Yeah. But here we're talking, that was a physical eating. And we're talking over here, the Torah study that we study is also called eating. Yeah. Yeah.
The Kohanim was physically
Yeah.
eating,
Yeah.
and we were getting the nutrition.
Yes. We're receiving the highest mochen of the mother, like we said earlier. And now we'll understand v'zeu, and now we go back to the verse. This is what King Solomon means. On this part of Torah, he says, it's healing, Rifus, it is healing, Tia l'sharecha, this is a healing to your navel. Which Torah is healing to your navel? Shlomo HaMelech was telling us that one day, the Baal Shem Tov will come and will start teaching Torah on a whole new level. Pay close attention, he's saying. This is food for your navel. This is a whole new level of food. The Rebbe is going to say a mimer. Pay close attention. Learn those maimarim. Shehu tabur chadavka. This is your navel. Ki betabur ha'nichnas kol pnimius haTorah. In the navel goes in the inner part of the Torah. Kamoi shehi acha kol abirudim. You're getting the purest flow after all of its refinement. You can study Torah, halacha, and all that, but there you're getting, actually the Torah is called Eitz Hadas Tovera. It's a mixture of good and bad, meaning, of course the Torah is holy, but the subject matter is a mixture of good things and bad stuff, and you have to separate. You're not learning only about the pure holy. You're learning about a lot of negative. You're learning about liars and deceptions. That's why the Gemara says that people sometimes, when people study Torah, and if they're not very God-fearing, the Torah itself can teach them how to lie. Because the Torah goes into all the possible arguments of what a liar can do. So that itself can make a person cunning and sharp. And so what happens? You learn Torah, and the Torah itself, that's what it can corrupt the person. And that's why the sages say that if a person merits, the Torah becomes a medicine of life. And if a person doesn't merit, it becomes a medicine of death. Because you're getting a Torah that's mixed, and you need to process it. Because of that, we don't say don't eat. We have to eat. But you got to be careful when you're eating. You got to go through the process of processing. But more important is to recognize that if you're also being given Torah that doesn't need any processing, it's in its purest, highest godly state, take it. This is so gewaldig. After it's all the refinement. And here he says in the parentheses, and this is what the sages say, that when a baby is in the stomach, when the baby is in the mother's womb, I'm sorry, not in the stomach, but the baby is in the mother's womb, they teach the baby the entire Torah. So what he's alluding to is that's the Torah that they're teaching the baby, the fetus, is an esoteric Torah. Yeah, that's right. But once you were born, once we're born, it closes. What is closed opens, and what opens closes, as we discussed earlier. And then the food will come through the mouth, and not through the. Then you got to take it in from the outside. Like our food. And that's like regular food. It needs many refinements. So Torah also needs much refinement. So it says, go have bread in my bread, or go fight for my bread. Torah is called bread like physical bread. And you need to. You can't just extract the godliness of Torah if you're not learning the esoteric. If you're learning the extroteric element of Torah, so then you're not going to get the nutrition of it, the godly nutrition, unless you first break it down. Starting off, belamed be'ay shenayim tchila. First, you got to chew it with the 32 teeth. And as I told the Mittler Rebbe explains that chewing it with your 32 teeth means saying it. The words have to be said, uttered with a person's mouth. In your mouth. You can't just read it with your eyes or with your mind. You have to say it. The mitzvah is v'dibarta, because that's part of the chewing process. And afterwards it goes into the stomach. That's why, and actually regarding Torah it says, Va'asim devarai bepicha. I put my words into your mouth. That means Torah is being fed to us through our mouth. I put it in your mouth. We're receiving it through our mouth. And on this you cannot say, Rifus tia l'sharecha, it will be healing to your navel. chulu, v'dai lemevin, because this does not work directly into our navel. But on the other Torah, the esoteric, the secrets of Torah, that's going directly into our inner being. The Gam Masha Kosov, and now what it also says, now the end of the very same verse, it says it will be a healing to your navel, says it will be an exceler to your bones. So what does that mean? Shikru Masecha, who Gam came now, is also for the reason that we said earlier. Bones are related to the father. That means father and mother both are partners in creating the child. The father's part is the bones. The mother's part is the arteries and the flesh. So, father and mother spiritually, we learned all the time. Chachma is called father. Bina is called mother. Because Chachma is still energy that's very, 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 very undefined, pure. And Bina is already energy going into a vessel. And that's the difference between father and mother. Father is pure energy. The mother is the vessel, the container. So Bina is a container. Bina seeks to understand everything. Everything has to be contained. Chachma is the first flash, the creative mind, the creativity. That's the Chachma. So spiritually, it's the same thing. The father gives the substance. The mother gives the more. So therefore, the bones, which is the very substance of it, comes from the father. Now, in the mother itself, again, the father gives the seed, which the mother then takes and creates the child with, right? The father that's in the mother is responsible in the creation of the bones, including during the pregnancy, the bones also need nutrition. The bones need to grow. How do the bones grow? And the primary development of the bone is to create the moisture of the bones, which is the bone marrow inside the bones. That's created from the chachma of mom. The mother is primarily bina, but she also has chachma, meaning men have feminine elements to them and women have masculine elements to them. So although we say that men are more related to chachma and women are more related to bina, yet a woman has chachma as well and a man has bina as well. So in addition to the fact that the bones come from the father, but also the development of this, how the Mittler Rebbe explains it, the development of the bones, the bone marrow and all that comes not from the bina element of the mother, that develops the flesh of the child, and the arteries, the blood vessels, and so forth. But the marrow comes from the lachluchis, from the wetness and the coolness in her brain, which is the right side of her brain, not the left side of the brain. In other words, her power of chachma is more responsible for the bones. So why is he saying over here? What he's saying is when mom is giving nutrition to develop her baby her fetus during the 9 months, in addition to mom giving mom stuff, mom is also giving dad stuff. In other words, she's feeding the child with masculine qualities as well. It's not just bina, it's also chachma. So, take it out of the physical now and bring it back to the spiritual. When we are learning Torah, the esoteric part of Torah, when we're going into the womb and being fed by bina, by the supernal bina, the secrets of the Torah, it's not just to our navel, it's not just a healing to our navel, it's also an exceler to our bones. In other words, the essential chachma of the soul, the bones of the soul. Imagine that. The bones of the soul, the essential skeleton of the person, the spiritual skeleton of who you are and what you are, is given bone marrow as a result of learning Chassidus. Do you realize? Or else the bones dry up, the spiritual bones. What do you have in your spiritual being? You become brittle. To have healthy bones. So number one, you of course you can eat food, you can eat healthy. But if you have an opportunity to get the most refined food, which now a lot of people don't like learning it because they don't feel that they can understand it in the same way like you can understand. Well, that's like saying, I enjoy eating a slice of pizza because it's very enjoyable to the taste buds. But if I'm going to get fetal food, fetal nourishment, the fetus doesn't get that kind of enjoyment. It's true. But it's a much deeper nourishment. For me personally, I get far more enjoyment learning this than learning the Megilah. But for some people who, right? But still it's worth it. Because you're getting food, both the purest food that creates the bina of the soul, which is your entire inner infrastructure for the days of Mashiach. Your infrastructure, the way you'll understand godliness, but even deeper than that, even the chachma of the soul is being substantiated. It's an exceler for your bones. And to make this even more, the relationship of it to the bones, sages tell us what's going to bring the resurrection of the dead. Now, the resurrection of the dead is primarily a exercise, a divine effect on the bones. You see, when the story is related in Ezekiel and in Yecheskel about God saying to the dry bones, speak to the bones and let them come alive. Atzamois yeveshais, the dry bones. You're not starting any resurrection before you're going to get to any. Before you get to cosmetics. Of course, there's later you need cosmetics. The flesh has to grow and all that. The sages say that the dead will wake up. They'll be exactly like they died, and then they'll get healed afterwards. But even just to bring the body back and put the flesh on it and the skin and all that is considered more cosmetic than the bones itself. The dried up bones, there's nothing left of the skeleton. That's why we say there's one tiny bone that's left over from there the resurrection is going to happen. But how do you get from that tiny little loose bone, which we know it nurtures from the lava malka, how do you get from that tiny little loose bone and get it a whole person? Oh, you have to get the bone marrow going again. You have to get the juice flowing in the internal marrow, reconstruction of the bones. What's going to do it? It says that Hashem is going to bring tal, a dew, and the dew is going to make tchias hamesim. It's the supernal dew. What's this dew? It's called tal Torah, the dew of Torah. What's the dew of Torah? The dew of Torah is Chassidus. This is tchias hamesim. This is the esoteric elements. It's the Oir Abba. It's the light of Chachma that's in Chassidus. In Chassidus there is Bina and there's Chachma. There is the concepts, the more understanding, the more Bina element, and then there's the pure godliness. When the Rebbe is teaching a mimer, he's giving you pure Elokus, Oir Abba, the light of Chachma. He's also giving you containers of Bina to understand it. It's like the difference between the Alter Rebbe and the Mittel Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe is more the Chachma and the Bina is more, the Mittel Rebbe is more the Bina, the more the vessels. But yet every Rebbe, when they taught Chassidus, there is the pure godliness that's in it, that's the light of Chachma. And that is healing to our bones. And that's what's going to make Tchias HaMesim. It's going to resurrect the bones. And by the way, the Rebbe, in one amazing talk, the Rebbe spoke about the Haftorah, where God said to Yecheskel, speak to the dry bones. And the Rebbe was explaining we're a generation where there are Jews who are dry bones. They dried up all of Yiddishkeit, and we have to go out to them and speak to them, speak to the dry bones. And how do you expect to resurrect? Look what the Rebbe did to a generation. Thousands of people, he brought them back to Judaism, to keeping. Why? Through Hasidus. Through him nurturing the bone marrow. He started bringing Jews whose Judaism dried up for so many years on the bone level. They completely disintegrated, were reconstructed. This is nothing less than Tchias HaMesim. Hasidus. And that's the pasuk. Healing to your navel, that's the Bina element. Mom giving mother stuff to the baby. And auxiliary to the bones is mother transmitting also dad's input. Through her chachma that's in the Bina, that she's also giving in the food that she's feeding. So that fluid or whatever it is, that nutritional transmission is made up on the best stuff one can only imagine. So now you understand why the Alter Rebbe, I believe this is the last mimer in the entire book, saying, this is what the book is all about. This is what I've been giving you. Let's read it inside. The bones come from the Father. That's the light of the Father. So that's Pnimius HaChachma HaGanuz b'Torah, the inner element of wisdom that is hidden in Torah. The Naso, and that becomes Shikoy Latzamis, that becomes medicinal and excellent to the bones. Lias Kemoichen Shebat Samis, for it to become the bone marrow, Toisefes Lachluches Hamayim, adding the moisture, Misoid Hamayim Shebamoyach, which is coming from the right side of the brain, is the more moist side of the brain. Ki Yadu, as it is known. It's interesting in Hebrew, brain is called Moach, and bone marrow is called Moach, giving a connection between the marrow in the bone to the brain. And in the brain itself, it's primarily the Chachma that's called Moach. And Chazal and the sages hinted to this in the following story. Talmud says in Masechta Shabbos that Rabbi Akiva, similar to the discussion I had before about when I got all upset about the rabbis, same kind of story. The Gemara there is talking about that certain things you're not allowed to do because they are copying the nations. They're idolatry. So then the Gemara says, but if someone says, wine and life to the rabbis, basically like making a toast and saying to life, to the rabbis, that's not considered the ways of idolatry. It looks like it was a type of thing that pagans used to do. They would say to life, drink something, or wine, or whatever they. So the Talmud says, no, but you're allowed to say l'chaim. And the Talmud says a story. Rabbi Akiva, by his son's wedding, was pouring for people wine. He was pouring l'chaim. And he said, Chamra v'chaya l'pum rabbanan. Wine and life to the mouth of the rabbis. It was a way of saying l'chaim on the bracha. Wine and life to the mouth. So there the Talmud proves that you're allowed to do so. Basically, I see in that story the exact story about the people complaining about going to the... and they said Rabbi Akiva did it. Also there, it looks like it's the same like idol worshippers. It's idol worship. Same story. Sages say, Rabbi Akiva did it. But now we'll understand that it's literally even deeper connected. Piddish, why? Chamra, now, what he's basically saying, the way it's a little hard this end, and I'm not understanding it fully, that's why I felt I needed more time. And the Mittler Rebbe seems to go on to an explanation to explain, and I didn't get to learn it well. But it seems like something like this. Although we say that this internal type of food doesn't go through the mouth, it's a food that goes directly only through to the fetus, only when you're in a fetus state, that's when you can receive this type of highly concentrated, most refined food, but not through the mouth. Yet we find that there are times when even through the mouth you can give this perfect food. Where do we find that? The mun, for instance, was a food that didn't need birurim, there was no bathroom, it says, and there was no impurity, because it was the purest food, even though it went through the mouth. The food of Shabbos. Obviously, it's depending on what kind of Shabbos you make, but the holier a person is, and the food of Shabbos is on a very high level. The lechem aponim, the bread that the Kohanim got from the showbreads, especially the Shai Rabbar and the Leviasan that we're going to be eating when Mashiach comes, those foods. This is all the most purified, although we're going to be eating it in the mouth. So Rabbi Akiva's blessing to the rabbis was that this higher food, the secret should be to your mouth. That means although you're eating through your mouth, it's coming through speech, it's not a delivery that's being delivered directly into the soul. Because in some way you can say that the big tzaddikim, the big Kabbalists, the big mystics, maybe they're feeding the souls of their people that are connected to them directly through the umbilical cord. Because they don't have to put it into words. In Chabad, the Rebbeim would teach. In other places, they would transmit these juices directly through the umbilical cord. So it seems like the Rebbe Akiva is saying that it can go through the mouth as well. You can have it both as a food, but a higher type of a food. So let's read. Pirish chamra ubchenas yayin. Chamra, the idea of wine is wine. I'm a sameach Elokim. That brings joy to Elokim. V'hu am tok Hashem Elokim debina. Shu b'chenas apnimius. Means like this. The name Elokim is associated with Bina. Because in Chachma is the name Havaya. The name Yud-Kei Vav-Kei is the name of God associated with Chachma, and the name of God associated with Bina is called Elokim. Because Bina has much more, has kalim, vessels, and therefore has much more tzimtzum, contraction, and limitation. And therefore, Elokim is the name of limitation. Fine. It would seem like, since Bina has a lot of Elokim to it, so her gevura, the gevura of Bina is intense. The nature of gevura is that it clamps shut. And because it clamps shut, it keeps the internal in the inside. The nature of Bina basically is to keep its secrets to itself, because it doesn't want to talk. It's hiding. That's what Gevura is. Withdrawal into itself. So Bina, Bina is the source for where these secrets of Torah are coming from, but it needs sweetening. What's the sweetening? When you have a big scholar or a big saintly rabbi, and you know they have amazing teachings to teach, but they're shy and they're quiet and they're just to themselves. So what do? You have a l'chaim, you have another l'chaim, another l'chaim. Wine has the nature of what? Nichnas yayin yotza sod. It takes the secrets out. Why? Because the wine is mesameach Elokim. There's a verse that says, yayin amas, it brings simcha to Elokim. It massages the tzimtzum. The Elokim naturally, because Bina is so much, Elokim is gevura, it withdraw. It's like the nature of fire that rises upward into itself. So you have to massage it, in the sense, bring joy to it. The joy counters the gevura of Elokim. It's mamtik the gevuras and allows the secrets out. Wine has that nature because wine itself is inside the grape and got squeezed out. It's the sod. Yain is the same gematria as sod of secrets. That's why the same numeric value, 70. And that's why yain is the secrets of Torah. So, he's saying that, what is Rabbi Akiva saying when he said, Chamra Lapume? he was saying that these secrets of Bina, that means the higher Torah, the most refined Torah, not the external Torah, the internal Torah, the secrets of Torah, which are generally hidden and concealed, should come down to the mouths of the rabbis. Usually, such secret mom only gives to the fetus, but it should come down to the mouths of the rabbis. Meaning, it should be able to transmit it into words. And you can eat it through your mouth, not just through directly into the neshama. It shouldn't be fed only into the subconscious. It can be a teaching. And this is the food that generally the fetus would eat. Because when wine goes in, secrets come out. The secrets of the innermost of Bina, and it's drawn in a helim from the concealed to the revealed, gashmi, for it to come down all the way into a physical food. It shouldn't only be able to go through the umbilical cord, we should be able to take it through the mouth. Like we said, man went through the mouth. Sometimes there is an exception that food that doesn't have to be processed is also delivered to you on a plate that you can eat. And this is the concept of that my words I should put into your mouth. Not only usually the external Torah is what you talk in your mouth. Here, that the teachings of Torah coming through the mouth should be gam mipnimiyas Torah, also the inner part of Torah. Shebe'imei Allah, that's in the supernal mother. That too should be able to be revealed in articulated spoken words, in dibur, in speech, and therefore being able to pre-process through our mouths. V'hainu chamra v'chaya, wine and life, lepum rabbanon, to the mouth of the rabbis. Lias mekabelim gam bepeh, that they should be able to receive also in the mouth. Mechamra v'chaya zeh, from this wine. He's so excited, he's already opening his mouth all the way. He's getting the yawn out. He's ready to get all this wine. Pnimis HaTorah. Shu p'chinas ha'pnimi shenikra ki nichnas yayin yatsa sod. Wine goes in, the secrets go out. V'dai lamevin, it is enough to those who understand. This is crazy. Such beautiful teaching. U'pirish chaya. Oh, so chamra we understand. What does he mean? Wine and so again, the way I say, I didn't see this earlier. I'm so excited about this. It seems like, again, usually this deeper nutrition to the baby goes directly into the umbilical cord. That means the baby doesn't have the experience. It just goes in. So this would be like the great tzaddikim who are feeding the Jewish people the esoteric part of the Torah, but not through teaching them, but through putting it directly into their souls. Like the other Hasidic rabbis did. But what the Alter Rebbe is saying, Rabbi Akiva was saying, you should give it to the mouth, is Chabad Chasidus, where you can take the secrets and articulate it in words, and have the Hasidim be adults, not just fetuses. Be full-fed, and as they are full-fledged born people with their own minds and stand on their own feet, yet they can still be nurtured with this purest nutrition. But why does it also say Chamra, wine? Wine we know is the secrets of the Torah. What is Chaya, life? He says wine and life. It's also referring to the internal Torah that's called life. It says by Mashiach that he's asking you for life. It's referring to the Mashiach is asking Hashem for Torah, for the deeper Torah, maybe for the new Torah that's going to be revealed when Mashiach comes. As the sages say, man boyachaya, who wants life, they should learn Torah. By Torah it says longevity, because Torah is life. Long life is in its right hand. Because the Torah is your life. And a lot like that. So therefore Torah could be, if I can maybe say, actually I'm afraid to say my own, but I'm just going to say maybe as a possibility, that the wine is referring to remember he said when the mom feeds the baby, she feeds mother stuff and dad stuff, both. One for the bones and one for the, so could be the wine, which is red, and its bina element is a bina, and v'chaya and life, that's more Chachma, Chachma Tichya, Chachma is life. So the transmission of the Chasidus is both the Bina and the Chayim, Lepicha, and yet we can take it in our mouth. We can take it as a regular food and not only through a back channel. This, I feel, was simply I think this was simply a gift. This was simply a gift today because I wasn't prepared to teach this. And minutes before I said,